Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was trained by Batman in Gotham's shadows. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The wind on the rooftop was a liar. It whispered of freedom, of flight, of endless blue skies, but Izuku Midoriya knew the truth. It was just a current of air, indifferent to the 15-year-old boy whose world had just been systematically dismantled by the one man he believed could build it. All might was gone. The thunderous boom of his departure still echoed in Izuku's bones, a percussive reminder of the finality of his words. "No, I don't think you can become a hero without a quirk." The sentence had been delivered with a practiced, regretful sympathy, the kind a doctor uses to tell a family there's nothing more to be done. It was meant to be a kindness, a gentle steering away from a cliff's edge. But for Izuku, it wasn't a redirection, it was a shove. He stood there for a long time, hands gripping the cool metal of the safety railing. His knuckles were white, the only blood-drained part of him that wasn't his heart. Below, the city of Muzidafu continued its vibrant, quirk-filled dance. Cars hummed along the streets, people flowed like multicolored rivers along the sidewalks, and the distant silhouette of another pro-hero leapt between buildings, a fleeting spark of primary colors against the concrete gray. It was the world he had worshipped from afar, a world for which he had prepared his entire life, and a world that had just posted a permanent, no entry, sign on its gates, just for him. His gaze fell to the notebook clutched in his left hand. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. The cover was slightly warped, and the spine bore the faint scorch marks from where Katsuki Bakugo had blasted it before tossing it out a window. Izuku had fished it out of the koi pond with a reverence usually reserved for sacred texts. Now, its pages felt like a collection of lies he had told himself. Each meticulously detailed drawing, each frantic scrawl of analysis on strengths and weaknesses, each theory on ultimate moves, it was all predicated on a single, faulty assumption, that this knowledge would one day be useful to him. That he, Deku, the quirkless wonder, could stand among them. All Might had even signed it. The big, bold, iconic signature sprawled across a page dedicated to his own debut. The ink felt like a taunt. A souvenir from the funeral of his dream. With a numb finality, Izuku let his fingers go limp. The railing felt cold against his palms as he turned away. He didn't take the elevator. He took the stairs, each step down a descent into a new, hollow reality. The stairwell was dim and smelled of dust and stale air, a fitting atmosphere for the ghost he now felt he was. The walk home was a special kind of torment. The world had not changed, but his perception of it had been irrevocably warped. The bright, hopeful colors of hero billboards seemed garish. The cheerful chatter of students walking home from school, occasionally punctuated by a casual display of a minor quirk, a girl elongating her fingers to retrieve a dropped pen, a boy with small wings on his ankles hovering a few inches off the ground to avoid a puddle, felt like a language he could no longer understand. He was a foreigner in his own city. He passed the underpass, the scene of his near-death experience, only an hour ago. The damp, grimy tunnel looked exactly the same. The sludge and debris had been washed away by the force of All Might's Texas smash, but the memory of suffocating, of mud and sewage filling his lungs, was still viscerally present. The hero who had saved him there was the same one who had destroyed him on the rooftop. The irony was a bitter pill he couldn't swallow. When he finally reached his apartment door, he paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. He had to face his mom. He had to pretend. He pasted a wobbly, unconvincing smile on his face, a mask so thin it was transparent, and turned the knob. Inko Midoriya knew the instant he walked in. A mother's intuition is a quirk all its own, and hers was screaming. She saw the vacant look in his eyes, the unnatural stillness of his shoulders, the way his ever-present mumble was completely absent. She saw the sign page in his notebook, which should have made him vibrate with an energy that could power the entire block, but he was holding it like an eviction notice. "Izuku? Honey? You met him?" she asked, her voice gentle, already braced for the impact. Izuku just nodded, the fake smile collapsing. His lower lip trembled. And then, the dam broke. He collapsed into his mother's arms, the sobs racking his small frame so violently she had to hold him up. He couldn't form words, only broken sounds of utter desolation. He said I can't. He finally choked out, the words tearing at his throat. He said, it's impossible. Inko held him tighter, her own tears soaking into the shoulder of his black Gakurin uniform. Her heart broke with his. All those years she had watched him, so full of passion and drive, and she had never known what to say. Should she have encouraged this impossible dream, or should she have protected him from the inevitable heartbreak? She had chosen to support him, and now she felt the crushing weight of his pain as her own failure. Oh, Izuku, she whispered, stroking his wild green hair. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Later that night, long after Izuku had cried himself into an exhausted, fitful sleep in his All Might-themed bedroom, a room that now looked like a cruel joke, Inko sat in the quiet of her living room, a cordless phone clutched in her hand. The glow of the city lights filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows. She stared at the international number on the screen, hesitating. She rarely called him at the office. His work was demanding, secretive, and the time difference was a nightmare. But tonight, she felt a desperation that transcended professional courtesy. She pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, a third time, the electronic tones sounding alien and distant, before a calm, familiar voice answered, a layer of static buzzing beneath it. Inko? Is everything all right? It's past midnight for you, Hisashi, she began, her voice cracking. She took a breath to steady herself. It's Izuku, thousands of miles away, in a city that bled shadows. Hisashi Midoriya stood before a holographic display, the blue light glinting off his safety glasses. The room was a sterile white, filled with the low hum of supercomputers and the quiet hiss of cryo-cooling systems. He wasn't just working abroad, as he and Inko had always told their son. He was a senior research scientist in the Applied Sciences Division of Wayne Enterprises, a position that put him at the bleeding edge of materials science, energy systems, and technologies so advanced they bordered on science fiction. He had been analyzing the stress tensile data of a new carbon nanofiber composite when his wife's name flashed on his private line. His heart had seized for a moment. She never called this late. What happened to him? Is he hurt? Hisashi asked, his voice sharp with concern. He swiped a hand through the hologram, dismissing the complex molecular models. His son was all that mattered now. He listened as Inko, her voice thick with tears, recounted the day's events. The sludge villain. All Might. The rooftop. The dream, shattered by the symbol of peace himself. Hisashi's hand balled into a fist at his side. He was a man of logic, of data and empirical evidence. He had always known, on a statistical level, that his son's dream of being a quirkless hero was improbable to the point of impossibility. But hearing the raw, unfiltered pain in his wife's voice, imagining the look on his son's face, statistics didn't matter. Equations couldn't fix this. He won't even look at his hero posters. Inko sobbed quietly. He just lies there, staring at the ceiling. His light. Hisashi, it's gone out. A cold fury, precise and controlled, settled in Hisashi's chest. A fury at a world that distributed power so arbitrarily. A fury at Bakugo for his years of cruelty. A fury at All Might for his thoughtless, pragmatic cruelty. But most of all, a fury at himself, for being half a world away while his son's spirit was being crushed. He had dedicated his life to his work, believing he was building a better, safer world. What was the point, if his own son felt so hopeless in it? Inko, he said, his voice low and firm. Listen to me. I'm going to do something. I don't know if it will work, but I have to try. I work for a very influential man. I have a favor I can call in. Just one. A favor? What are you talking about? I can't explain it all over the phone. Just trust me. Give me a day. Let Izuku rest. I'll call you back. After he hung up, Hisashi stood in the silent lab for a long moment. He looked at the small, framed photo on his desk. It was of him, Inko, and a 5-year-old Izuku, the boy grinning a gap-toothed smile and wearing a comically oversized All Might onesie. The fire in that little boy's eyes was the same fire he'd heard extinguished in his wife's report. He was a scientist. He solved problems. And this was the most important problem of his life. He squared his shoulders, left the lab, and made his way to the one office in the entire building that required 3 separate levels of biometric clearance to even approach. He was about to make a request that was either brilliant or insane. 3 days passed in a haze of suffocating silence. Izuku moved through the apartment like a wraith. He ate what was put in front of him without tasting it, responded to his mother's worried questions with single, mumbled words, and spent hours in his room, the curtains drawn, dismantling the shrine to his former life. All Might figurines were packed into boxes. Posters were carefully taken down, rolled up, and hidden in the back of his closet. It was a quiet, heartbreakingly methodical process of self-erasure. On the 4th day, a car pulled up to their modest apartment building. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement. A long, impossibly black sedan, so polished it seemed to drink the midday light. It was utterly silent, gliding to a stop at the curb with the grace of a panther. There was no logo on it, no brand he could recognize. It simply exuded an aura of immense, quiet power. A man emerged from the driver's side. He was elderly, with thinning white hair, a trim mustache, and a posture so straight it could have been drawn with a ruler. He wore a simple, perfectly tailored black suit, but it was his eyes that held Izuku's attention from the apartment window. They were sharp, intelligent, and held a deep, weary sadness that seemed at odds with his prim and proper demeanor. He buzzed their apartment. A startled Inko answered, and the man's voice, crisp and British, came through the intercom. "Mrs. Midoriya? My name is Alfred Pennyworth. I am here on behalf of Mr. Wayne. I believe your husband was expecting me?" Confused but flustered by the man's polite authority, Inko let him in. Alfred Pennyworth stood in their small jenkin, his presence making the apartment feel suddenly smaller. He bowed slightly to Inko, a gesture of old-world courtesy that was both disarming and impressive. "A pleasure to meet you, ma'am. May we speak for a moment? It concerns your son Izuku." They sat at the small kitchen table, Inko nervously offering tea, which Alfred accepted with a small, gracious smile. Izuku was coaxed out of his room, shuffling into the kitchen with his head down, refusing to make eye contact. Alfred placed a sleek, dark gray portfolio on the table. "Mr. Midoriya has spoken at great length to my employer, Mr. Bruce Wayne, about his son's current situation," he began, his gaze softening as he looked at Izuku. "He also forwarded several of Izuku's analytical journals for Mr. Wayne's review." Izuku's head snapped up. His notebooks? Why would his dad show those to his boss? A fresh wave of humiliation washed over him. "Mr. Wayne," Alfred continued, ignoring Izuku's distress, "was, to put it mildly, exceptionally impressed. Not with the subject matter, you understand, but with the methodology, the level of detail, the tactical foresight, the pattern recognition. It shows a mind of rare and singular talent." He opened the portfolio. Inside were official-looking documents on heavy, cream-colored paper, embossed with the stylized logo of a globe held within a W. "Wayne Enterprises. Wayne Enterprises has a special program," Alfred explained, his voice even and professional. "The Prodigy Internship. We seek out young minds with unique potential in non-traditional fields and offer them an immersive, fully funded apprenticeship at our headquarters in Gotham City. It involves advanced studies in applied analytics, logistical threat assessment, and RD support. It is an extraordinary opportunity. On the basis of Hisashi's recommendation and his own assessment of your work, Mr. Wayne would like to extend an invitation to Izuku." Inko stared, dumbfounded. Gotham? In America? It was so far. The thought of her son being an entire ocean away was terrifying. Izuku just stared at the documents. An internship? For his creepy hero stalking? It made no sense. This was some kind of charity, a pity offer concocted by his dad to make him feel better. I don't have a quirk," Izuku mumbled, the words tasting like ash. "I can't do anything." Alfred's gaze did not waver. "Mr. Wayne is not in the business of quirks, young man. He is in the business of results. And he believes your mind can produce them. The program is not about physical ability, it is about intellect, will, and a capacity for seeing the world in a way others do not. Your notebooks prove you possess all 3 in abundance." Inko looked from the distinguished Englishman to her son. She saw the conflict in Izuku's eyes. The deep, ingrained feeling of worthlessness warring with a tiny, flickering spark of something. Was it curiosity? Intrigue? For the first time in days, it wasn't complete and utter despair. Her own fear was a small price to pay for that spark. Izuku, she said softly, putting a hand on his arm. What do you think? Izuku looked at his all-might-free walls, at the boxes of his dead dream. He looked at his mother's worried face. He thought of Bakugo's sneer, of All Might's pitying gaze. What was left for him here? More apologies? More scorn? A life spent on the sidelines, watching others live the life he wanted? This offer was a life raft. It didn't matter if it was a pity offer. It didn't matter if it was strange. It was an escape. Okay, Izuku whispered, his voice hoarse. I'll do it. The flight was a blur. The transition was jarring. Mizutafu, with its bright, optimistic architecture and pro-heroes dotting the skyline like friendly gargoyles, was a world away from the city that greeted him. Gotham was a beast of stone and shadow. As the private Wayne jet made its final approach, Izuku stared out the window, mesmerized and terrified. The buildings were monolithic, Gothic spires that clawed at a sky the color of a day-old bruise. A perpetual twilight seemed to cling to the streets, even in the middle of the afternoon. There was a weight to the city, an oppressive atmosphere that settled deep in his chest. It smelled of wet concrete, industrial exhaust, and something ancient and cold. Wayne Manor was an island of impossible sanity in the city's madness. A sprawling, Gothic estate perched on a cliff overlooking the city. It was surrounded by acres of manicured grounds and shrouded by a thick forest. It was less a house and more a fortress of old money and secrets. Alfred led him through the grand entrance hall, the ceilings so high his voice echoed. And there, at the top of a sweeping staircase, stood the man himself. Bruce Wayne was exactly as he appeared in the business magazines his father sometimes left at home. Tall, impossibly handsome, with a charming smile that seemed to reach his dark, intelligent eyes. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than the Midoriya's apartment. He descended the stairs with an easy, athletic grace. Izuku Midoriya, he said, his voice a smooth, pleasant baritone. He extended a hand. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Your father is one of our best and brightest. I see now it runs in the family. Izuku numbly shook his hand. It was firm, calloused, a surprising contrast to the billionaire playboy image. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Wayne. Izuku stammered, bowing deeply. Bruce's smile remained, but Izuku, the boy who analyzed everything, saw something in his eyes. A flicker of something ancient, something deeply sad and calculating, just for a moment, before the polished mask of the philanthropist slid back into place. It was a detail that didn't fit the picture. The rest of the evening was a polite fiction. He was shown to a guest room larger than his entire apartment. He was served a dinner by Alfred where the food was so good he was almost afraid to eat it. Bruce Wayne was a perfect host, asking him about his trip, about Japan, about his interests, though he artfully steered the conversation away from heroes. The whole time, Izuku felt like he was being scanned, measured, and assessed. That night, after a long and restless attempt at sleep, there was a soft knock on his door. It was Alfred. Mr. Wayne would like to see you now, Master Izuku, he said, his expression unreadable. To discuss the true nature of your internship. Alfred led him not to a study or an office, but to a grandfather clock in a quiet hallway. He reached out and moved the hands of the clock to 10:48. With a low groan of ancient mechanisms, the entire clock swung inward, revealing a dark, descending staircase. A cold, damp air, smelling of earth and ozone, wafted up. Izuku's heart hammered in his chest. Where are we going? Below, Alfred said simply, his voice echoing in the passage. To the Real Wayne Enterprises R&D department. The descent was long. The stone steps gave way to a massive natural cavern, lit by the stark, sterile glow of a massive computer terminal. The cave was a breathtaking fusion of raw nature and bleeding-edge technology. A collection of armored vehicles, each more intimidating than the last, sat on a raised platform. Glass cases displayed strange suits and an arsenal of bizarre, bat-shaped gadgets. And everywhere, the sound of fluttering wings and the low hum of immense power. Izuku stood at the bottom of the stairs, his mind struggling to process the sheer, impossible reality of it all. This wasn't a lab. This was something else. A figure emerged from the deepest shadows near the computer. It was not the charming, smiling Bruce Wayne. This figure was a creature of the night. Taller, broader, wrapped in an armored suit of midnight black and dark gray Kevlar. A long, scalloped cape draped from his shoulders like folded wings. But it was the head that seized Izuku's breath. A cowl with two pointed ears, and a mouth set in a permanent, grim scowl. The eyes were just stark white lenses, devoid of any emotion. This was no man. This was a walking shadow, an icon of fear. This was the Batman, the vigilante of Gotham, a figure of myth and whispered rumor in hero circles. Quirkless, they said. A ghost. A demon. The Batman strode forward, his heavy, armored boots clicking on the stone floor. He stopped a few feet from Izuku, towering over him. The voice that came from the cowl was not Bruce Wayne's smooth baritone. It was a low, terrifying growl, electronically distorted, like the sound of grinding stone. "Your father sent me these," Batman said, and held up one of Izuku's notebooks. "Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. Izuku flinched as if struck. "He thought I would see a fan," the creature rumbled. "He was wrong. This is not the work of a fan. This is the work of an analyst. You don't just see their strengths, you see their flaws, their blind spots, their dependencies. You dissect them. You found a weakness in Endeavor's heat regulation based on 3 seconds of news footage. You correctly theorize the operational range of Midnight's quirk is dependent on atmospheric humidity. You see the cracks in the armor of gods." Batman took a step closer, and Izuku had to fight every instinct that screamed at him to run. "Your world told you that you are worthless because you are quirkless. They are fools. Your mind, Midoriya, your mind is a weapon. But it is untrained, unfocused, held back by sentiment and hero worship." He stopped directly in front of Izuku. The boy had to crane his neck to look up at the terrifying cowl. "This is your internship. Your true offer. Forget everything you know about heroes. The bright costumes, the smiling for cameras, it is a lie. True justice is found in the dark. It is built on discipline, on fear, and on an unbreakable will." The white lenses seemed to bore into Izuku's very soul. "I can't give you a quirk. I cannot give you superpowers. What I can offer you is a chance. I will teach you. I will train you. I will push you until you break, and then I will teach you to rebuild yourself into something stronger. I can teach you to become a weapon. I can teach you to be a hero without powers. But it will be the hardest thing you have ever done. It will cost you your childhood, your tears, and your blood. It will break you." Silence. The only sound was the drip of water from a distant stalactite and the frantic pounding of Izuku's own heart. This was it. The precipice. All Might had told him to be realistic. This man, this terrifying shadow, was offering him the impossible, but he wasn't sugarcoating it. He was promising him hell. He was offering him a path paved with pain and suffering. Izuku looked at the dark figure before him. He thought of the rooftop, of the gnawing, empty despair that had consumed him. He thought of a world that had no place for him. This man was offering him a place, not in the sun, but in the shadows. And in the shadows, at least, he would have a purpose. A fire he thought had been extinguished forever, a single, defiant ember, began to glow in the pit of his stomach. Tears welled in his eyes, but for the first time in days, they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of defiance, of a desperate, terrible hope. He straightened his back, clenched his fists, and met the unblinking gaze of the cowl. His voice was small, but it did not tremble. "I accept." The concept of morning in the Batcave was an artificial one. There was no sun, only the persistent, low hum of the massive computer and the cool, damp air that always smelled of stone, ozone, and wet earth. Izuku's new alarm clock was a soft, polite knock on his bedroom door, a sound that belied the hell that was to follow. 5 o'clock, Master Izuku. Alfred's voice would chime through the wood. "Breakfast is in 15 minutes. Master Wayne awaits you below." The first day, Izuku had practically sprung out of bed, his heart thrumming with a nervous, electric energy. This was it. The start of his training. He imagined a high-tech gym, a kindly mentor, a structured curriculum. He was wrong on all counts. He descended the stone steps into the cavern to find not Bruce Wayne, the charming billionaire, but the silhouette of the Batman, stripped down to black combat trousers and a tight-fitting tactical shirt. The cowl was off, but the man's face might as well have been carved from the same granite as the cave walls. His expression was a flat, emotionless mask of discipline. "Warm up!" Bruce grunted, gesturing to the vast, open floor of the cave. "Run the perimeter until I tell you to stop." The perimeter of the Batcave was not a neat, circular track. It was a treacherous, uneven path of jagged rock and slick stone, winding around stalagmites and past chasms that dropped into utter blackness. Izuku, full of naive determination, started jogging. An hour later, his lungs were searing brands of fire, his legs were trembling jelly, and every muscle fiber screamed in protest. He was gasping, leaning against a rock formation, when Bruce's voice cut through his haze of pain. "I didn't say stop." That was day one. It only got harder. The training was not a regimen. It was a crucible, designed to burn away every ounce of weakness, every preconceived notion, every childish dream he had ever harbored. Bruce was not a teacher in the traditional sense. He was a force of nature, an unyielding standard against which Izuku was constantly measured and found wanting. He was deconstructing Izuku Midoriya, brick by painful brick. The physical conditioning was a relentless, grinding assault on his body. The morning runs became longer, eventually done while wearing a weighted vest that felt like it was filled with lead and despair. He did pull-ups on the slick, unforgiving edges of stalactites, his hands tearing and bleeding until calluses formed like armor. He pushed massive, weighted sleds across the cavern floor until his vision swam with black spots. Bruce's philosophy was simple. The body is a machine, and it must be pushed past its breaking point to discover its true limits. There was no encouragement, no. "You can do it." There was only the work, and the cold, analytical silence of his mentor watching his every failure. More than once, Izuku pushed himself to the point of collapse, his body giving out as he lay heaving on the cold stone, the taste of metal and failure in his mouth. He would wake up in his bed hours later, his muscles aching with a profound depth he never knew possible, a glass of water and a protein shake on his nightstand, placed there by Alfred's silent, ghostly care. Parallel to this physical torment was the martial education. Bruce didn't just teach him how to fight, he taught him the brutal grammar of violence. "Forget the flashy moves you see on television," Bruce growled during one of their first sessions in the sparring ring. He moved with a speed and precision that was utterly inhuman for a man of his size. "Heroism in a real fight is about one thing: efficiency. Ending the threat before it can harm you or anyone else." He taught Izuku the fundamentals of boxing, not for sport, but for the footwork, the head movement, the core understanding of range and timing. Every day began with hours of shadowboxing, of hitting the heavy bag until his knuckles were raw and his shoulders burned. Then came the lessons in Krav Maga. There was nothing elegant about it. It was a science of pain and incapacitation. Bruce would demonstrate moves with terrifying clarity, a precise strike to the throat, a joint-breaking lock, a disarming technique that could snap an opponent's wrist. He would then have Izuku practice them on a reinforced training dummy, over and over, until the movements were ingrained, instinctive. "Hesitation is a luxury you cannot afford," he would repeat, his voice a low mantra. "In the field, hesitation gets you killed. Or worse, it gets someone else killed." And then there was the art of the ghost. Ninjutsu. Bruce taught him how to move without a sound, how to use shadows as a cloak, how to become one with the environment. The lessons were exercises in frustration. Izuku would try to sneak up on Bruce in the vast darkness of the cave, every nerve on fire, holding his breath, only to have a hand clamp down on his shoulder from behind. "I heard the scuff of your shoe from 50 meters away," Bruce would state, his voice devoid of triumph, just fact. "I heard the fabric of your clothes rustle. I heard you breathe. Do it again." Even the cave itself became a training ground. Bruce taught him parkour, not as a flashy acrobatic display, but as a method of tactical navigation. He had Izuku leaping across chasms, scaling sheer rock faces, and balancing on narrow ledges hundreds of feet in the air. There were no safety nets. The palpable, life or death risk was part of the lesson. Fear was a tool. It could sharpen your senses or it could paralyze you. He had to learn to control it, to channel it, to make it his servant. But the physical deconstruction was only half of the process. The true crucible was the assault on his mind and his soul. While his body screamed for rest, his nights were spent in front of the cold, blue glow of the Bat computer. The chair was a throne of information, and Bruce was a merciless king. The curriculum was a dark tour of human depravity. Criminology, forensic pathology, advanced chemistry, tactical analysis, psychological profiling. It was a college education in the anatomy of crime. He didn't read textbooks. He was given raw, unfiltered data from the Gotham City Police Department's archives. Cold case files thick with the dust of forgotten tragedies. He was forced to stare at grainy, black and white crime scene photos, to read the clinical, detached language of autopsy reports, to piece together the shattered lives of victims. One night, Bruce uploaded a file to the main screen. The Calendar Man killings. Unsolved. 1998. The killer murdered someone on every major holiday for a year, then vanished. Find him. Izuku spent the next 72 hours mainlining coffee and data. He abandoned his hero-centric mindset. He wasn't looking for a quirk or an ultimate move. He was looking for patterns, for human error. He cross-referenced victimology with city records, weather patterns, and forgotten news articles. He analyzed the killer's methodology, not as a villain's gimmick, but as a psychological compulsion. On the third day, bleary-eyed and running on fumes, he found it. A single, overlooked detail in a witness statement from the Thanksgiving murder, mentioning a specific type of floral delivery van that wasn't registered to any company in Gotham. It was the crack. The first thread to pull. Good, was all Bruce said when Izuku presented his findings. Now do it again. The Riddler's first 3 crime sprees. Find the logical flaw in his pattern that the GCPD missed. This mental training was designed to do one thing, to reforge his analytical mind. To take the obsessive, detail-oriented brain that had catalogued hundreds of heroes and retask it. Bruce was teaching him to look at a crime scene the way he once looked at All Might's debut video, with a fanatic's eye for detail, seeing not just what was there, but what was missing. The most brutal part of the crucible, however, was the emotional deconstruction. Bruce saw Izuku's hero worship, particularly his blind adoration of All Might, as a fundamental weakness, a cancer that had to be excised. One evening, after a particularly grueling sparring session where Izuku had been effortlessly dismantled, Bruce motioned him towards the computer. He pulled up a file, a compilation of news reports and internal hero commission analyses. All Might, Bruce said, his voice a low rumble. The symbol of peace. Tell me what you see. On the screen was footage of a famous battle. All Might, smiling his brilliant, unwavering smile, smashing a villain through a building. The crowd cheered. He's saving everyone, Izuku said, the old reverence creeping into his voice. Is he? Bruce's finger tapped a key. The footage rewound, then zoomed in. He highlighted the building the villain was thrown through. That was a data solutions company. The resulting shockwave from the impact wiped their servers. 1,000 people lost their jobs. The structural damage caused a gas line to rupture 3 blocks away, leading to an explosion that killed an elderly couple. Their deaths were never attributed to the villain. They were filed as collateral damage. Acceptable losses in the face of a greater victory. He brought up another file. A hostage situation in a skyscraper. All Might had arrived, delivered a thunderous Detroit smash that neutralized the villains, and saved the day. Look closer, Bruce ordered. He replayed the impact in slow motion. The force of the blow had shattered every window on that side of the building for 10 floors. 3 of the hostages suffered severe lacerations from the flying glass. One woman was permanently blinded in one eye. All Might's power is a sledgehammer, Midoriya. It is magnificent for smashing walls, but utterly devoid of precision. He saves the day in the loudest way possible, smiling for the cameras, while the quiet tragedies he leaves in his wake are swept under the rug. He turned from the screen to face Izuku, his eyes cold and hard. You worship a symbol. An ideal. But ideals don't bleed. Ideals don't have to clean up the mess. Your hero worship is a liability. It makes you sentimental. It makes you predictable. It will get you killed. There is no perfect hero. There is only the mission, and the grim calculus of the choices you have to make. The words were like acid, dissolving the very foundation of Izuku's identity. It hurt more than any punch or physical exhaustion. This was an attack on his faith. Through this relentless storm of physical and mental abuse, there was one constant, quiet point of grace: Alfred Pennyworth. Alfred was the counterbalance to Bruce's darkness. He was the one who would find Izuku after a session, tending to his cuts and bruises with a practiced, gentle hand. He never commented on the training, never criticized Bruce. He simply provided a quiet space of healing and humanity. He would bring Izuku hot soup in the lab late at night, his presence a silent reminder to eat, to rest. He would engage him in conversations about things other than fighting and death, about classic literature, about gardening, about his time in the military. He was subtly teaching Izuku how to maintain his humanity in the face of the abyss Bruce was forcing him to stare into. One night, Izuku was sitting in the massive Manor kitchen, nursing a particularly nasty sprain in his wrist. He was exhausted, sore, and emotionally raw from another one of Bruce's lectures on the statistical failures of pro-heroes. He felt like he was drowning. Alfred set a cup of chamomile tea in front of him. "A difficult day, Master Izuku?" he asked, his voice soft. Izuku just nodded, staring into the steaming cup. I don't think I can do this," he whispered, the admission costing him dearly. "He wants to break me. I can feel it. He wants to destroy the person I am." Alfred polished a silver spoon with a soft cloth, his movements calm and deliberate. "Master Bruce is not trying to destroy you, my boy," he said after a moment. "He is trying to save you. He is giving you the armor he never had. The world is a cruel, unforgiving place. It takes, and it does not apologize. Master Bruce knows this better than anyone." He paused, his gaze distant, as if looking at a ghost only he could see. "He is teaching you how to fight monsters. My role is to ensure you do not become one in the process. You must hold on to that core of goodness within you, Izuku. That fire that drives you to help others. That is your true strength. Do not let the darkness he shows you extinguish it. Let it temper it. Let it make your light burn smarter, not just brighter." Alfred's words were a lifeline. They gave context to the cruelty, a purpose to the pain. He was being forged, not broken. Weeks bled into months. The scrawny, hesitant boy who had arrived in Gotham began to disappear. His frame filled out with lean, wiry muscle, born of practical strength, not aesthetic. His movements became more fluid, more confident. A latticework of pale scars began to map his arms and torso, each one a testament to a lesson learned. His eyes, once wide and full of hero worship, were now sharper, more analytical. He still mumbled, but it was no longer the nervous rambling of a famba. It was a quiet, constant stream of threat assessment, of tactical observation. He was changing. He was becoming harder. He was becoming a weapon. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday night. It was late, and the sound of the downpour outside was a dull roar that barely penetrated the cave. He was in the sparring ring with Bruce. By now, he could last longer. He could block, he could parry, he could even land the occasional glancing blow. But he had never, not once, gotten a clean hit. Bruce was always faster, smarter, a dozen steps ahead. Tonight was no different. Bruce moved like a shadow, his strikes economical and devastating. Izuku was on the defensive, his body a symphony of aches and bruises. "You're still fighting with your heart," Bruce grunted, sweeping Izuku's leg and sending him sprawling to the mat. "You're emotional. Sloppy." Izuku pushed himself up, his chest heaving. Frustration was a hot coil in his gut. He was tired of failing. He was tired of being told he was inadequate. He launched himself forward, a flurry of attacks driven by pure anger. Bruce deflected them with almost contemptuous ease. "Anger is a tool, not a fuel," Bruce said, catching Izuku's fist and using his momentum to twist him into a painful arm lock. "It burns hot and fast, and leaves you with nothing. Control it, or it will control you." He released Izuku, shoving him back. Izuku stumbled, catching his breath. And then, something in his mind shifted. Alfred's words echoed in his head, burn smarter, not just brighter. He had been trying to beat Bruce at his own game, the game of physical dominance. But that wasn't his game. He looked at Bruce, but for the first time, he didn't see an unbeatable warrior. He saw a system. A set of patterns. He saw his hero analysis notebooks come to life. He cleared his mind of the anger, of the frustration. He let the cold, analytical part of his brain take over. He remembered the hours spent in front of the back computer. He wasn't Izuku, the hero trainee. He was Izuku, the analyst. He began to move, his posture changing. Less aggressive, more observational. Bruce came at him again. Izuku didn't try to meet him head-on. He evaded, watched. Left jab, right cross, feint to the body. He's used that combination 4 times tonight, Izuku's mind raced. He favors his right leg for his pivot, a weight shift of less than a centimeter, but it's there. It's the tell. Bruce pressed the attack, sensing the change but not its purpose. He saw hesitation, not observation. He threw the combination again. The left jab. The right cross. Izuku deflected them, his movements precise, almost mechanical. Bruce began the feint, the subtle drop of his shoulder, the beginning of the weight shift onto his right leg. In that split second, the entire world slowed down for Izuku. He saw the opening. Not a big one. Not a flaw. Just a predictable, infinitesimally small window in the defenses of the Batman. He didn't counterattack. He didn't try to overpower him. He flowed. As Bruce feinted, Izuku exploded forward, not with a punch, but with a step. He moved inside Bruce's guard, dipping under the expected cross. He didn't use his fist. He used his training. A clean, efficient palm heel strike straight from Krav Maga, delivered with perfect timing and leverage, right to the center of Bruce's sternum. Thump. The sound was shockingly dull. The impact wasn't powerful enough to injure, but it was solid. It was clean. It was undeniable. It broke Bruce's rhythm, forcing a sharp exhalation of breath from him and pushing him a half step back. Silence descended upon the ring. The only sounds were the dripping of water and the drumming of the rain far above. Izuku stood, his palms still tingling, his heart hammering in his chest, ready for the inevitable, brutal counterattack. It never came. Bruce slowly lowered his hands. He looked down at the spot on his chest where Izuku had struck him, then back up at the boy. His face was unreadable, a mask of stone, but his eyes, for the first time, Izuku saw something other than disappointment or detached analysis in them. It was a flicker of something sharp, something that might have been surprise, or even grudging respect. Izuku braced himself. For a reprimand. For another lecture. For the order to do it again until he failed. Bruce simply stood there for a long moment. Then, he gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Again, he said. The word was the same one he always used. But the tone was different. It wasn't a dismissal anymore. It was a challenge. It was an acknowledgement. Izuku took his stance, a fresh wave of determination washing away his exhaustion. His body was still broken, bruised, and aching. But for the first time since he'd arrived in Gotham, his spirit felt whole. The crucible hadn't destroyed him. It had begun to forge him. The months that followed Izuku's breakthrough in the sparring ring were a blur of escalating intensity. The small victory had not earned him respite. It had earned him a higher standard. Bruce, having seen the potential of Izuku's analytical mind applied in real time, began to integrate it into every aspect of the training. Sparring sessions became brutal puzzles of pattern recognition. Workouts were designed to push both his physical limits and his ability to maintain tactical awareness under extreme duress. Izuku was stronger, faster, and tougher than he had ever imagined possible. His body was a collection of tightly coiled muscle and disciplined reflexes. His mind was a honed weapon, capable of dissecting complex problems with cold, efficient logic. He could move through the darkest corners of the Batcave without a sound, his footfalls as soft as falling ash. He could identify 20 different ways to disable an armed opponent before they even realized he was in the room. He had been reforged in the Crucible, but the Batcave was a controlled environment. A laboratory. Now, it was time for the field test. Tonight you come with me, Bruce announced one evening. There was no ceremony, no preamble. He was already in the process of putting on the bat suit, the familiar clicks and hisses of the armor plates locking into place echoing in the cavern. Izuku's heart, which he had trained to remain steady under pressure, gave a distinct, traitorous leap. He had watched Bruce leave for patrol hundreds of times, monitoring his vitals and communications from the relative safety of the bat computer. He had analyzed the data, studied the routes, and memorized the city's dark geography. But to go out there, into the city itself? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. What's the mission? Izuku asked, his voice coming out a little too eager. He immediately tried to temper it, adopting the professional tone Bruce demanded. What's the objective? Observation, Bruce said, his voice already taking on the distorted, gravelly timbre of the cowl's modulator as he pulled it on. The white lenses flared to life, seeming to stare right through Izuku. You will do nothing. You will say nothing. You will engage no one. You are a ghost. A shadow. You will be my eyes from a distance. Your only job is to watch, listen, and learn. Is that understood? Yes, sir, Izuku replied, his throat suddenly dry. Alfred appeared at his side, holding a bundle of dark, lightweight fabric. Your gear for the evening, Master Izuku. It wasn't a costume. It was an exercise in pure function. A simple, form-fitting black suit made of a non-reflective, noise-dampening polymer. There were no symbols, no colors, just flat, light-absorbing black. It came with a full-face mask, similar to a ski mask, and a set of night vision goggles that integrated with a communications earpiece. It was designed for one purpose, to make him disappear. Dressing in the suit felt like putting on a second skin, a skin made of shadow. He felt anonymous, invisible. Looking at his reflection in the polished black hood of the Batmobile, he didn't see Izuku Midoriya. He saw a faceless shape, a piece of the night. Comms check. Batman's voice crackled in his ear, the sound jarringly intimate. Loud and clear, Izuku whispered, his own voice sounding foreign to him. Stay on this channel. Report only what you see. No speculation. No emotion. Just data. The roar of the Batmobile's engine was a physical thing, a deep, primal growl that vibrated through the floor of the cave and up into Izuku's bones. The massive canopy hissed open, and Batman settled into the driver's seat. You'll be taking the roof exit, Batman stated, gesturing with his head towards a darker, higher section of the cave where a sleek, black motorcycle rested. It looked less like a vehicle and more like a weapon on two wheels. The bike is programmed with your route. It will get you into position. I'll meet you on the other side of the city. Stay in the shadows. Avoid the main thoroughfares. Go. There was no time for hesitation. Izuku swung a leg over the bike. The machine was surprisingly light, made of some carbon composite. The moment he touched the handlebars, a small holographic display shimmered to life, showing a GPS route mapped out in thin, green lines. He took a deep breath, twisted the throttle, and the bike shot forward with a silent, electric surge, carrying him into a rising tunnel that led to the world above. The transition from the hidden exit into the Gotham night was breathtaking. He emerged from a disguised rock face in the middle of Robinson Park, the city sprawling before him like a nest of dying stars. The air was thick with the smell of rain and exhaust. The distant wail of a siren was the city's constant, mournful heartbeat. This wasn't a simulation on the Bat computer. This was real. He followed the programmed route, his training taking over. He kept the bike in the shadows of alleys, using side streets and service roads. He moved with a quiet efficiency that was a stark contrast to the city's chaos. The people he saw were hunched figures, hurrying from one pool of light to the next, their faces etched with the perpetual anxiety of living in Gotham. This city wasn't just dark, it was wounded. His destination was a designated rooftop in the industrial district known as the Cauldron. He ditched the bike in a prearranged dead drop and ascended the building's fire escape with a silent, practiced ease, his parkour training making the climb feel almost natural. From the roof, he had a commanding view of the surrounding blocks, a decaying maze of brick warehouses, rusting water towers, and steam-belching pipes. I'm in position, he whispered into his comm. Acknowledged, Batman's voice replied. Maintain your position. Report. Izuku lay flat on the gritty rooftop, peering over the ledge through his night vision goggles. The world below was painted in shades of eerie, digital green. At first, it was just life. A stray cat darted across an alley. A homeless man huddled for warmth over a steam grate. It was mundane quiet. The kind of quiet that felt wrong in Gotham. The kind of quiet that precedes a storm. Then he saw it. 2 blocks down, at the mouth of a narrow alley, a flicker of movement. A woman, clutching a purse, walking quickly. A figure detached itself from a darkened doorway, moving to intercept her. Potential mugging. Izuku reported, his voice a low, steady monotone. Alleyway at the corner of 14th and O'Connell. 1 victim, female. 1 assailant, male, large build. He was feeding pure data, just as he was trained. But his heart was a frantic drum against his ribs. He could see the glint of a knife in the man's hand. The woman's gasp of fear was too far away to hear, but he could see it in the sharp, panicked movement of her body. Every fiber of his being screamed to intervene. He was a hero in training. He was supposed to do something. He could be there in 30 seconds. A well-aimed projectile, a distraction. Hold your position. Batman's voice was a blade of ice in his ear. Observe. The command was absolute. Izuku gritted his teeth, his knuckles white where he gripped the ledge. He felt powerless, a voyeur to someone else's terror. He watched as the man grabbed the purse. The woman struggled. The knife flashed. And then, from the opposite end of the alley, darkness coalesced. Batman descended like a wraith. There was no sound, no warning. One moment, the alley was empty save for the criminal and his victim. The next, the bat was there, a terrifying, horned silhouette against the dim city glow. The mugger's reaction was a study in pure terror. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. The knife, a moment ago a tool of intimidation, suddenly seemed like a child's toy. He made a fatal mistake. He lunged. Batman moved with a brutal, balletic grace. A fluid sidestep, a blur of motion. An elbow strike to the man's jaw, a sharp crack that Izuku could almost feel from his perch. The man crumpled, unconscious before he hit the filthy ground. It was over in less than 3 seconds. Batman didn't spare the man a glance. He checked on the woman, a few low, reassuring words, before pointing her in the direction of the nearest main street. Then, with a flick of his wrist, a grapple line shot out, and he ascended into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as he had arrived. Report. Batman's voice commanded in Izuku's ear, as if nothing had happened. Izuku took a shaky breath, forcing the adrenaline down. Threat neutralized. Victim is safe. Suspect is incapacitated. Good. Maintain surveillance. The night continued like a series of grim vignettes. He watched from the rooftops as Batman dismantled a drug deal in a condemned tenement building. Izuku was his overwatch, his analytical eye. 4 hostiles, ground floor. Izuku reported, his vision cutting through the grime-caked windows. 2 armed with handguns, 1 with a shotgun. 4th man appears to be the lookout. There's a weak point in the floorboards in the back corner, near the collapsed stairwell. Thermal shows it's structurally compromised. Acknowledged. Moments later, a series of small, percussive thumps echoed from the building as Batman used the information, coming up through the floor to take them by surprise. The takedowns were swift, silent, and brutal. Izuku was starting to understand his role. He wasn't just an observer. He was a force multiplier. His perspective, his analytical ability, gave Batman a tactical edge. This was a partnership, albeit a silent, distant one. He felt a surge of pride, a sense of purpose. He was helping. He was part of this. But Gotham had a way of punishing pride. Their final objective for the night was to gather intelligence on a new smuggling operation run by a low-level mob boss named Maroni. The handoff was supposed to happen at an abandoned shipyard on the East River. Izuku repositioned, finding a perch on a rusted crane that gave him a clear view of the designated pier. Below, a group of 5 thugs milled about, their breath pluming in the cold, damp air. They were jumpy, constantly checking their watches and scanning the darkness. 5 targets on the pier, Izuku whispered. All appear to be armed. Awaiting the exchange. Stay focused, Batman replied. This is an intel gathering app only. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. A black van without license plates pulled up to the pier. 2 more men got out, carrying heavy-looking crates. Izuku zoomed in with his goggles, running a quick scan on the crate markings. Crates are marked with Cord Industries logos. Ballistics Division. Looks like they're moving high-grade explosives. Suddenly, one of the thugs, a young kid, no older than Izuku himself, seemed to get spooked. He said something to the others, gesturing wildly into the darkness. He was pointing vaguely in Izuku's direction. Did he see me? No, impossible. I haven't moved. My suit is blacker than the shadows. Hold still. Batman's voice was a low growl. Don't move a muscle. The other thugs laughed the kid off, shoving him playfully. But the kid was persistent. He pulled a handgun from his waistband and fired a single, wild shot into the darkness, towards the crane. The bullet ricocheted off the metal frame a few feet from Izuku's head with a high-pitched whine. The sound was deafeningly loud in the quiet night. Instinct, born of months of grueling training, took over. Izuku flattened himself against the crane's gantry, his profile becoming almost invisible. But the damage was done. The shot had spooked the entire group. They were on high alert now, their weapons drawn, fanning out and scanning the shadows with flashlights. The deal was blown. Worse, one of the thugs broke away from the group. He was a big, burly man, and he was running. Not towards the van, not towards the other thugs, but away from the pier, down a narrow access road that led directly towards the base of Izuku's crane. He was running right towards Izuku's position. Izuku's mind went into overdrive. He's panicked. He's not running to me, he's just running away. But if he gets to the base of this crane, he'll see the access ladder. He'll know someone is up here. He'll compromise the mission. He'll compromise Batman. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, wild rhythm. This wasn't a simulation. This wasn't a training dummy. This was a real person, armed and unpredictable. Do something. His hand went to the small utility pouch on his belt. It contained a few simple, non-lethal tools, smoke pellets, a grappling hook, a handful of small, weighted projectiles, practice batarangs, essentially. He could take the man down. A quick takedown, silent, drag him into the shadows. But the order echoed in his head. Do nothing. Engage no one. The man was getting closer. 20 meters. 10. He was at the base of the crane now, panting, looking back over his shoulder at the chaos on the pier. Izuku was frozen. It was a perfect, agonizing paralysis. His training told him to act, to neutralize the threat to the mission. His orders told him to remain a ghost. The 2 directives were at war within him, and in their conflict, they rendered him immobile. He squeezed his eyes shut for a split second, his mind screaming, hesitation creates widows. Bruce's voice, cold and unforgiving. Suddenly, a black shape dropped from the sky. Batman landed on the running thug like a predator pouncing on its prey. There was no fight. There was only a swift, brutal impact, and the man went down in a heap, out cold. Batman didn't even look at the unconscious form. He looked straight up. Even through the darkness and the distance, Izuku could feel the searing intensity of that glare. The white lenses of the cowl seemed to burn through him, stripping away his anonymity, his excuses, his very soul. In that one look, he felt the full, crushing weight of his failure. He had hesitated. The ride back to the Batcave was a silent, suffocating ordeal. Izuku followed the Batmobile on the bike, the shame so heavy it felt like a physical weight pressing down on him. He had failed his first test. He hadn't just failed the mission, he had failed his mentor. He had proven that when it mattered, he was still just a scared, quirkless kid. Back in the cave, the roar of the Batmobile's engine died, plunging the cavern into a profound silence broken only by the dripping of water. Bruce emerged from the car, pulling off his cowl. His face was a thundercloud of controlled fury. He didn't yell. He didn't rage. That would have been easier to bear. Instead, he just stood there, his disappointment a palpable force in the cold air. He walked over to the Bat computer and replayed the footage from Izuku's goggle cam and his own suit cam, side by side on the massive screen. He forced Izuku to watch. There it was. The thug breaking away. The clear, unobstructed view Izuku had. The agonizing seconds ticking by as Izuku did nothing, and then Batman's perspective, a blur of motion as he was forced to abandon his own position to clean up Izuku's mess. "Explain," Bruce said. The word was not a question. It was a demand. I hesitated. Izuku mumbled, his eyes fixed on the floor. The orders were not to engage. But the man was a threat to the mission. The directives were contradictory. I froze. You froze, Bruce repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. You had multiple tactical options. A non-lethal projectile to the leg to trip him. A smoke pellet to disorient and redirect him. You could have created a sound diversion 50 meters to your left to draw his attention. You had the tools. You had the training. But you chose to do nothing. Because you were scared. I wasn't. Izuku started to protest, but the lie died in his throat. He had been scared. Terrified. Bruce slammed his gauntlet fist down on the console. The sound was like a gunshot in the cavern, making Izuku flinch violently. Do not lie to me! Bruce roared, the sudden explosion of sound echoing off the stone walls. He strode over to Izuku, his immense presence seeming to suck all the air out of the cave. He loomed over him, his face inches from Izuku's. Your analysis is worthless if you can't act on it, he snarled, his voice raw with a fury that was almost frightening. Your training is a waste if it fails you when it counts. Out there are no contradictory directives. There is only the mission. There is only protecting the innocent. There is a man with a gun and a family a block away, and your hesitation is the only thing that stands between them. Hesitation doesn't just get you killed, boy. It makes you a liability. It makes you an accomplice to every terrible thing that happens while you're trying to make up your mind. He pointed a shaking finger at the screen, at the image of the panicked thug. Tonight it was him. A scared, stupid punk who got away. But what about tomorrow? What happens when it's a child, and you freeze? What happens when it's one of Joker's men with a bomb, and your hesitation kills 100 people? What then? Izuku couldn't speak. The words were like physical blows, each one landing with pinpoint accuracy on his deepest fears and insecurities. He was a fraud. A quirkless, useless Deku, pretending to be a hero in a world of giants. He had been given this incredible, impossible chance, and he had failed. Tears of shame and frustration welled in his eyes, hot and stinging. He hung his head, waiting for the inevitable. For Bruce to tell him the internship was over. To send him home. Back to Japan. Back to being nothing. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. Bruce's harsh breathing slowly evened out. The storm of his anger seemed to recede, leaving a cold, hard stillness in its wake. Go, Bruce said finally, his voice once again a low, controlled rumble. He had turned his back on Izuku, staring up at the row of memorial cases in the darkest corner of the cave. A vandalized Robin suit, a tattered Batgirl costume. Shrines to past failures. Get some sleep, the lesson is over. Izuku didn't need to be told twice. He fled, stripping off the black suit and practically running to his room, the weight of his mentor's disappointment chasing him every step of the way. He collapsed onto his bed, but sleep wouldn't come. He just stared into the darkness, the scene replaying in his mind on an endless loop. His paralysis. Batman's glare. The rage in his mentor's voice. The lesson wasn't over. He knew it in his bones. This was the most important lesson of all. It wasn't about martial arts or criminology. It was about the simple, brutal truth of the world he was trying to enter. In the field, there is no room for fear. There is no time for second-guessing. There is only the choice, and its consequences. Tonight he had learned what it felt like to make the wrong one. And it was a feeling he swore, with every fiber of his being, he would never, ever feel again. The shadows of Gotham had tested him, and he had been found wanting. But as he lay there, the shame slowly, painfully, began to crystallize into something else. Something harder. Resolve. The week following his failure was a new kind of hell, one of quiet, suffocating isolation. The grueling physical training stopped. The intense sparring sessions ceased. Bruce did not yell at him, did not lecture him, did not even seem to acknowledge his presence beyond the barest of necessities. Izuku had not been expelled from the Garden of Eden, he had simply been made invisible within it. His world shrank to the dimensions of the chair in front of the Batcomputer's secondary terminal. He was given tasks, but they were menial, insulting in their simplicity. He sorted and archived old case files, updated patrol route logs, and ran diagnostics on the cave's atmospheric regulators. It was the work of a low-level clerk, not a protégé. He was grounded, not just from the city, but from the mission itself. The message was clear: you are not ready. You are a liability. Every night, he would watch as Bruce suited up, the familiar ritual now a painful reminder of his exclusion. He would sit at his terminal, tracking Batman's progress through the city as a blip on a map, a ghost haunting his own life. The silence from his mentor was louder than any roar of anger had ever been. It was a silence that said, "I was wrong about you." Alfred, in his infinite, quiet wisdom, seemed to understand. He would bring Izuku his meals at the console, never commenting on the new arrangement, but there was a sympathetic sadness in his eyes. He would leave a thermos of hot tea, a quiet act of kindness that was the only warmth Izuku felt in those long, cold nights. "Patience, Master Izuku," Alfred had said once, while clearing away an untouched dinner plate. "A cracked bell is not a broken one. It is merely waiting to be reforged." Izuku didn't feel like a cracked bell. He felt like shattered glass. He spent his days in a haze of shame, the memory of his hesitation on the crane playing on a loop in his mind. He had been given a chance to be part of something real, and he had choked. The quirkless, useless Deku that Bakugo had always sneered at felt more real than ever. But beneath the shame, the analyst in him refused to die. It was the one part of him that still functioned. While archiving the files, he read them. He absorbed every detail, every mistake the GCPD made, every brilliant deduction Batman had employed. He studied Gotham's criminal history with the same obsessive fervor he had once reserved for heroes. He was still training, even if his teacher had abandoned him. He was learning the city's secret language, its rhythms of violence and despair. He was waiting for a chance, any chance, to prove that Alfred was right. That chance arrived not with a bang, but with a riddle. It started at the Gotham City Public Library. A small, precisely placed explosive device detonated in the rare books room. The blast was contained, injuring no one but destroying a priceless collection of 17th-century manuscripts. It was a clean, professional job. When Commissioner Gordon and the GCPD arrived, they found no shrapnel, no timer fragments, no forensic evidence of any kind. All that was left was a single, lime green business card, placed on a scorched pedestal where a Gutenberg Bible had once rested. On the card, in elegant, mocking calligraphy, were the words, "I have cities, but no houses. I have mountains, but no trees. I have water, but no fish. Where do my next words echo? Solve me, Batman, or the sound will be deafening." Izuku watched the live news feed from his terminal, his fingers frozen over the keyboard. A Riddler copycat. Gotham hadn't had one in years. The original, Edward Nygma, was safely locked away in Arkham, his mind a fractured mess. This was someone new. Someone who had studied the master. Bruce returned to the cave early that morning, his mood even darker than usual. He analyzed the data from the crime scene, his movements sharp and angry. He hated these games. To him, crime wasn't a puzzle, it was a plague. "A map," Bruce grunted, pacing in front of the main screen where the riddle was displayed. "The answer is a map. Too simple. It's a taunt." He spent the next hour cross-referencing every map-related location in Gotham. The city archives, the cartography department at Gotham University, prominent map collectors. It was a wild goose chase, and they both knew it. The copycat was smarter than that. Izuku watched, his mind racing. He wanted to say something, to offer a theory, but the chasm of his failure was too wide. He kept his silence, his fingers flying across his own keyboard, pulling up the library's digital archives, architectural blueprints, everything he could find on the initial crime scene. He wasn't just looking at the riddle, he was looking at the context. The second bomb went off 24 hours later. This time, it was at the central hub of Gotham's monorail system, Grand Avenue Station. Again, no one was killed, but the explosion was larger, causing a full system shutdown and plunging the city's transit into chaos. The new riddle was delivered via a hacked digital billboard, the green text scrolling across the panicked faces of the evening commuters. I have a neck but no head. I have a body but no legs. I am used to dress the dead. Where will I next come to a head? A bottle, Izuku whispered to himself, his heart sinking. The Gotham shipyard. The old Kane distillery. He was thinking like Batman, like the police. He was thinking about the answer, not the questioner. Bruce was already in the Batmobile, the engine a low, angry growl. Gordon's men are sweeping the distilleries. I'll take the shipyard. Midoriya, monitor police comms. Report any developments. It was the first direct order he had received in a week. A tiny, insignificant breadcrumb of trust. Izuku's fingers trembled as he brought up the communications array. Yes, sir. He spent the next few hours as a passive observer, listening to the frantic chatter of police officers finding nothing. The copycat was leading them all by the nose. The city was on edge, a palpable current of fear running through the airwaves. This new player was meticulous, intelligent, and most terrifyingly, completely invisible. While he monitored the comms, Izuku's mind was working furiously in the background. He pulled the two riddles up on a split screen, along with every piece of data from the two bombing sites. He wasn't a detective. He wasn't a vigilante. He was an analyst. And an analyst looks for the pattern, the underlying data that connects disparate events. He's not the Riddler, Izuku thought, his eyes scanning the lines of code from the hacked billboard. Nigma's narcissism meant his riddles were always about proving his own intellectual superiority. The locations were merely stages for his genius. This is different. The locations, they feel deliberate. He started cross-referencing the library and the train station. Not as locations, but as historical and civic entities. He went deep, diving into Gotham's digital archives, a place he now knew better than his own bedroom. He pulled up city council records from the 1920s, public works proposals, mayoral decrees. He was adrift in a sea of forgotten data. His eyes were burning from staring at the screen, and his back ached from hours of sitting, hunched over in concentration. He was about to give up when he found it. It wasn't a clue, it was a ghost, an anomaly in the city's history, a 1938 urban renewal project proposed by Mayor Thaddeus Wayne. It was an ambitious, radical plan to overhaul Gotham's infrastructure, a new public library, a centralized train station, a state-of-the-art water treatment plant, and a new city hall. The project was meant to be the shining beacon of Gotham's future, but it was derailed by the Great Depression and the corruption of the city council. Only 2 of the 4 cornerstones were ever completed, the library and Grand Avenue station. The other 2 proposed sites, the treatment plant and city hall, were eventually built decades later, in entirely different locations. The original plans, and the land consecrated for them, were forgotten, buried under layers of city bureaucracy and time. Izuku's blood ran cold. He pulled up the original 1938 blueprints. The proposed location for the water treatment plant was an abandoned pumping station on the industrial island of Trigate. The site for the new city hall was a now derelict courthouse in the old Gotham district. He looked at the second riddle again. I have a neck but no head, a bottle. It wasn't about the bottle. It was about what goes in it. Water. The next target was the pumping station. He had to tell Bruce. He took a deep breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was it. He would either be right, and prove his worth, or he would be wrong, and be relegated to the role of glorified secretary forever. He toggled his comm link. Batman. Come in, Batman. There was a pause, filled with the static of the open channel. What is it? Bruce's voice was strained, clearly frustrated with the fruitless search. I think I know where the next bomb is, Izuku said, his voice steadier than he felt. And the one after that. He laid it all out. The 1938 renewal project. The 2 completed locations. The 2 forgotten ones. He spoke with the clear, concise logic of a machine, presenting the data, the correlation, and the inevitable conclusion. He didn't offer it as a theory. He presented it as a fact. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Izuku could picture Bruce in the Batmobile, his jaw tight, processing the information, searching for flaws in the logic. The old pumping station on Trigate Bridge, Bruce said finally, his voice devoid of emotion. That's where the third bomb will be. Yes, Izuku confirmed. And the final one will be at the abandoned courthouse on Miller Street in Old Gotham. Another pause. Then, the roar of the Batmobile's engine intensified over the calm. How long until the next 24-hour cycle is up? Izuku's fingers flew across the keyboard. The library bomb was at 9 p.m. The station was at 10 p.m. He's escalating. If the pattern holds, the next one is at 11 p.m. You have 17 minutes. It's on the other side of the city. I won't make it. The words hit Izuku like a physical blow. After all that, they were still too late. But then, Bruce's voice came again, colder, harder. No. I won't make it. The courthouse is closer. I'll go there and disarm the fourth bomb. You will have to guide Gordon and the bomb squad to the third one. Verbally. And you will do it perfectly. The responsibility was crushing. He wasn't just an analyst anymore. He was an active participant. People's lives depended on his words. I understand, Izuku stammered. Patch me into Gordon's comms. Secure line. You will be my voice, Bruce commanded. With trembling hands, Izuku routed the communications. Suddenly, the calm, weary voice of Commissioner Gordon filled his ears. Batman? Anything? Izuku took a deep, shuddering breath. He closed his eyes, picturing the Batcomputer's interface, the city map, the blueprints. He wasn't scared Izuku Midoriya. He was Batman's agent. Commissioner, Izuku said, his voice pitched low, running it through a modulator to disguise his age, just as he and Bruce had once practiced. The next target is the abandoned Trigate pumping station. The device is likely located in the main filtration chamber. You have less than 10 minutes. What? How do you know? Gordon's voice was a mix of shock and skepticism. There's no time to explain, Izuku said, his voice gaining a confidence he didn't feel. He was channeling Bruce's authority. I am sending the building schematics to your squad's terminals now. The filtration chamber is on sublevel 2. The original access tunnel from the main road has collapsed. You'll need to use the emergency overflow conduit. The entrance is hidden behind a rusted metal plate 20 yards east of the main gate. He was a conductor, orchestrating the city's emergency services from miles away. He listened to Gordon barking orders, the bomb squad mobilizing. He guided them through the derelict building, his eyes scanning the blueprints, identifying structural weaknesses, potential hazards. He was in the cave, but he was also there, his mind walking the dark, damp corridors with them. There at the chamber door. Gordon's voice crackled. It's sealed. Heavy steel. Blast it. A new voice, presumably Batman's, cut in over the secure channel, meant only for Izuku. There's no time for finesse. Commissioner, you need to blast the door, Izuku relayed. He heard the muffled crump of a breaching charge, then the frantic shouts of the bomb squad. We see it. It's wired to the primary intake valve. Timer shows 2 minutes. While the bomb squad worked, Izuku's attention was split. On one screen, he monitored their progress. On another, he guided Batman through the labyrinthine streets of Old Gotham. Miller Street is blocked for a parade, Izuku reported. Rerouting. Take the access tunnel under Grand Park. It's an old bootlegger's route. It'll bring you out 2 blocks from the courthouse. Acknowledged. Batman grunted, the sound of the Batmobile's whining engine a constant presence in the background. The tension was unbearable. It was a symphony of chaos, and he was at its center. He was fighting a war on 2 fronts, armed only with information. This was a different kind of heroism. It wasn't about landing a punch, it was about connecting the dots. It wasn't about being strong, it was about being right. Timer at 30 seconds, a voice shouted from the pumping station. I'm at the courthouse, Batman reported, his voice calm. Going in. We can't disarm it, the bomb squad leader yelled. It's a pressure plate trigger. The whole system is rigged. We can't move it. Panic. Pure, raw panic in the man's voice. Izuku's blood turned to ice. He had led them there, but he couldn't save them. He had failed again. No. His mind, sharpened by months of relentless training, cut through the fear. Think. Analyze. What did they miss? The copycat isn't just smart, he's arrogant. He wants to show off. The trap can't be impossible, it just has to look it. What's the trigger mechanism? Izuku demanded, his voice sharp. It's a complex mercury switch tied to the pressure plate. If we lift the bomb, the mercury shifts, closes the circuit. Boom, the valve? Izuku said, a sudden, blinding flash of insight hitting him. He said it was wired to the primary intake valve. Is the valve open or closed? It's closed. Why? He's not just bombing the station, he's trying to flood the tunnels. Open the valve. Now, are you insane? That could destabilize the entire platform. It's a counterweight. Izuku shouted, his voice cracking with intensity. The water pressure from the open valve will counteract the pressure plate. He built a failsafe into his own puzzle to show how clever he was. Do it, he heard Gordon yell. Do what he says. That's an order. A loud, groaning screech of rusting metal echoed over the comms as the massive valve was turned. Then, a roar as decades of stagnant water surged into the chamber. It's working! The squad leader screamed over the deluge. The pressure gauges are stabilizing. We can lift it! We can lift it! At that exact moment, Batman's voice cut in, calm and cold. Fourth device disarmed. I have the suspect. Silence. The chaotic symphony fell away, leaving only the sound of Izuku's own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of his heart. On the other end of the line, he could hear the relieved, breathless cheers of the bomb squad. He had done it. He slumped back in his chair, his body trembling with the adrenaline crash. He felt dizzy, exhausted, but alive in a way he hadn't felt in weeks. He hadn't thrown a single punch, but he had fought a battle and won. An hour later, Bruce returned to the cave. He placed a small evidence bag on the console. Inside was a single, green business card. He hadn't apprehended the copycat himself. The man, a disgruntled former city planner who had been fired for his obsession with the failed genius of the 1938 renewal project, had been waiting for the police at the courthouse, eager to be caught and have his brilliance recognized. Bruce stood in silence for a long time, looking at the main screen, where Izuku had mapped out the entire sequence of events, a complex web of data points, historical records, and logical deductions. Izuku watched him, his anxiety returning. He had succeeded, but he had still acted without direct orders, taken a massive gamble. He still didn't know where he stood. Bruce finally turned away from the screen to face him. The cowl was off, and his face was unreadable. He walked over to where Izuku sat, and for a terrifying moment, Izuku thought the lecture was finally coming. Instead, Bruce just stood there, looking down at him. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then, he gave a single, slow nod. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the weight of a mountain being lifted from Izuku's shoulders. Your analysis was sound, Bruce said, his voice a low, quiet rumble. It held no anger, no disappointment. Just a statement of fact. You processed the data. You saw the pattern they missed. You saved those men. He paused, and his gaze was direct, unwavering. It was the first time in a week he had truly looked at Izuku. You saved those people, Izuku. He used his first name. The two simple words broke through the last of Izuku's defenses. It wasn't praise. It was acknowledgement. It was validation. It was the absolution he had been so desperate for. The tension in his shoulders, a constant companion for days, finally released. He had found his place. He would never be the physical powerhouse that Batman was. He would never be the smiling symbol of peace that All Might was. His heroism wouldn't be measured in punches thrown or villains smashed. It would be measured in patterns recognized, in puzzles solved, in lives saved by the relentless, obsessive power of his own mind. A new kind of hope began to bloom in his chest. It wasn't the bright, naive, hero-worshipping hope of his childhood. This was different. It was quieter, sharper, more real. It was a hope forged in failure and redeemed in the cold, analytical light of the Bat computer. He was not just a student anymore. He was a partner. And he was ready for whatever came next. The Riddler copycat incident was a turning point. The frigid silence that had defined the Batcave for a week thawed, replaced by a new, more intense phase of Izuku's training. The dynamic had shifted. He was no longer just a student being broken down and rebuilt. He was an asset being honed. Bruce integrated him fully into the nightly operations. While Batman patrolled the rain-slicked streets of Gotham, Izuku was his voice in the sky, his eyes in the ether. He became the man in the chair, a role he took to with a ferocious dedication. He was Alfred's quiet understudy, learning the intricate dance of supporting a soldier in the field. He coordinated police responses, hacked security systems on the fly, and fed Batman a constant stream of tactical data, his fingers a blur across the keyboard. He learned to read the city not as a collection of streets and buildings, but as a living organism of data streams, traffic patterns, power grids, communication networks. His mind, once a repository for hero trivia, was now a weaponized encyclopedia of Gotham's deepest secrets. His physical training resumed, but with a new focus. It wasn't just about strength and endurance anymore. It was about surgical precision. Bruce taught him advanced stealth techniques, the art of the silent takedown, and the practical application of fear as a weapon. They spent hours in the cave's advanced training simulator, running through complex scenarios that tested not just his combat skills, but his ability to think and adapt under fire. "Your greatest weapon is not your body," Bruce would repeat, his voice a low growl over the simulation's sound of gunfire and sirens. "It is your mind, but your mind is useless if your body cannot put its conclusions into action. They must work as one. The analyst and the operative must be the same man." Izuku had proven his mind. Now, he had to prove he could be the operative. The moment came one evening, after a particularly successful night where Izuku's quick thinking had helped Batman dismantle a gun-running ring with 0 casualties. Bruce stood before a series of large, cylindrical stasis pods that lined one wall of the cave, their contents shrouded in shadow. "You've proven your value as an analyst," Bruce said, his back to Izuku. "You've shown you can handle the pressure of the mission, but to be effective in the field, to be more than just a voice on the comms, you need an identity. A symbol." He pressed a button on a nearby console. One of the pods hissed open, bathed in a soft, white light. Inside, mounted on a mannequin, was a suit. It was nothing like the bright, primary colors of the heroes Izuku had grown up idolizing. It was a creature of function and shadow. The base layer was a dark, forest green, almost black in the low light, made of a triple-weave Kevlar threaded with Nomex for fire resistance. Over this were charcoal gray armored plates, segmented and shaped to allow for maximum flexibility while protecting vital areas: the chest, the shoulders, the forearms, and shins. They were matte, designed to absorb light, not reflect it. The gloves were reinforced at the knuckles, and the boots had thick, shock-absorbing soles for silent landings and cushioned impacts. The utility belt was a marvel of engineering, a sleeker, more compact version of Batman's own, with pouches and magnetic holsters for a variety of gadgets. But it was the headpiece that truly defined it. A full cowl, similar in shape to Batman's but without the long, dramatic ears. Instead, it had shorter, more functional points that housed the communication and sensory equipment. The face was protected by a sleek, black rebreather mask that would filter out toxins and distort his voice, with stark white lenses for the eyes, mirroring his mentor's intimidating gaze. It was the face of a ghost, an urban predator. "It's a prototype," Bruce explained, his voice echoing slightly in the large chamber. "Based on your biometrics and predicted combat style. Lightweight, durable, enhances stealth. It's a tool. Nothing more." Izuku approached it with a reverence that bordered on religious. He reached out a hesitant hand, his fingers tracing the cool, hard lines of the chest plate. This was real. This was for him. It was a tangible symbol of everything he had worked for, bled for. "What will you call yourself?" Bruce asked, his tone flat, analytical. "Every symbol needs a name. It is the first weapon you deploy. It creates an expectation, a legend. It can inspire fear or hope. Choose carefully." Izuku's mind, which could process thousands of data points in a second, went completely blank. A name. He had never thought about it. In his childhood dreams, he was always just a hero. He wasn't All Might. He was just helping. His thoughts drifted back to Japan. To the cramped classrooms of Aldera Junior High. To the explosive crackle of Bakugo's palms. and to the name. The insult, the brand that had been seared into his identity since he was 4 years old. Deku. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. It meant useless. The one who can't do anything. It was the summary of his entire life before Gotham. Deku, he said, the word barely a whisper. Bruce raised an eyebrow. What does it mean? Izuku's gaze fell to the floor. He felt a flush of the old shame, the familiar sting of inadequacy. It's an insult. A name a childhood acquaintance used to call me. It means useless. He expected Bruce to dismiss it. To tell him to choose something strong, something intimidating like Nightwing or Spectre. Instead, Bruce was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Useless, Bruce repeated, testing the word. He walked over to a display case that held a single, jagged batarang, chipped and worn from use. When I first started, they called me a myth. A ghost. The media called me a menace. My opponents called me a demon. They threw names at me to try and define me, to put me in a box they could understand. He turned to face Izuku, his eyes dark and intense. There is power in a name, Izuku. But the greatest power comes from defining it yourself. You can let a name be a cage, or you can turn it into a weapon. Let them call you useless. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe they know what you are. Every criminal who whispers your name in a dark alley and feels a flicker of fear will be proving them wrong. Own their insults. Let that be the fuel. In the shadows of this city, Deku will not mean useless. It will mean the last thing they see before the darkness takes them. A fire ignited in Izuku's chest, burning away the last vestiges of his old shame. Bruce was right. He couldn't erase his past. He couldn't erase the years of being quirkless, of being looked down upon, but he could redefine it. He could take their poison and make it his own. He would take the name that was meant to break him and forge it into a shield, a symbol. He looked from the suit to his mentor, a new, hard-won confidence settling in his bones. He stood a little taller. My name is Deku, he said, and for the first time, the word held no power over him. It was his. The suit felt like a second skin, but a heavier, more purposeful one. The world seen through the cowl's white lenses was a stream of data, thermal imaging, acoustic signatures, atmospheric composition. His own voice, when he spoke, was a low, digitized rasp, utterly alien. He moved through the training deck, the suit's articulated joints silent, the soft-soled boots making no sound on the metal floor. He felt powerful. He felt anonymous. He felt ready. His first solo mission was not a baptism by fire. It was a test of precision, stealth, and control. It was a final exam. Oswald Cobblepot, Bruce began, the Bat computer displaying a detailed schematic of the Gotham shipyards. The Penguin. He's moving a shipment of illegal arms tonight, high-powered rifles sourced from Markovia. Your objective is not to engage Cobblepot. He is a secondary target for a larger investigation. Your mission is to infiltrate the transfer point, document the sale, identify the buyer, and disable the shipment. Get in, get the intel, and get out. You are a ghost. Understood? Understood. Deku rasped, his new voice feeling strange and powerful in his own ears. You will go in alone, Bruce continued. I will be monitoring from here. This is your test, Izuku. No backup. No safety net. Succeed or fail on your own. The words should have been terrifying, but instead, they were liberating. This was the ultimate expression of trust from the man who trusted no one. He equipped his belt with a carefully selected loadout. Smoke pellets. A few custom-made batarangs, smaller and lighter than Bruce's, designed more for precision strikes and ricochets than brute force. A compact grapple launcher. A high-resolution micro-camera. A small pouch of miniaturized EMP devices. He was an operative, and these were his tools. He took the motorcycle again, its silent electric motor carrying him through the sleeping city. The salt-laced air of the shipyards was thick and cold. He dismounted a quarter-mile out, proceeding the rest of the way on foot, a green and black shadow flitting between stacks of shipping containers. His perch was a high gantry crane, similar to the one that had been the stage for his greatest failure. This time, there was no hesitation. He lay prone, the cold metal a familiar sensation, and surveyed the scene below. Pier 12. A group of 10 of Penguin's thugs, clad in thick coats and armed with automatic weapons, stood guard around a large shipping container. They were loud, arrogant, their laughter echoing over the lapping water. He activated his camera, the lens zooming in, capturing each of their faces. The data streamed back to the Batcave in an encrypted burst. Facial recognition running. Bruce's voice, calm and detached, murmured in his ear. Mostly low-level enforcers. 2 have outstanding warrants. Keep going. A long, black limousine, ostentatious and out of place among the industrial decay, rolled onto the pier. The buyer. The car door opened, and a man in an expensive suit stepped out, flanked by 2 bodyguards. He was older, with slicked-back silver hair and a cruel sneer. That's Anton Falk, Bruce identified. He's a supposed legitimate businessman, but we've long suspected him of being the primary arms supplier for the street gangs in the Narrows. This is the link we needed. Good work. Now, the shipment. The mission was halfway complete, but the hardest part was yet to come. Disabling the shipment without being detected. He couldn't just blow it up. The resulting explosion would bring half the GCPD down on them and alert Cobblepot that his operation was compromised. He needed to be surgical. He scanned the area, his mind working like the Bat computer itself. 10 hostiles. The container is centrally located. Open ground all around. Direct approach is suicide. They have overlapping fields of fire. The real weakness is their arrogance. They're not expecting trouble. He spotted his route. A series of support beams and gantries that ran directly over the pier. A pathway in the sky. He holstered his camera and pulled out his grapple launcher. With a near-silent thwip, the line shot out, the magnetic hook clamping onto a beam 100 feet away. He swung out from the crane, a pendulum of shadow, landing as softly as a moth on a narrow metal strut high above the pier. He moved with a fluid, practiced grace, his months of parkour training making the dizzying heights feel like a second home. He was directly above the thugs now, a ghost looking down on the unholy transaction taking place below. Falk was inspecting one of the rifles, a satisfied smirk on his face. This was the moment. He reached into his belt and pulled out 3 small, disc-shaped objects, his custom batarangs. They weren't sharpened like Bruce's. They were weighted for impact, designed to stun and disorient. He took a deep breath, his heart a steady, controlled rhythm. He calculated the angles, the ricochets, the timing. He was no longer thinking. He was doing. He threw the first one. It wasn't aimed at a person. It struck a large, metal floodlight at the far end of the pier. The clang was loud, and the bulb shattered, plunging that section of the dock into darkness. What was that? One of the thugs yelled, spinning around, raising his rifle. 7 of the 10 thugs immediately turned towards the sound, their attention diverted. A rookie mistake. He threw the second batarang. This one arced down, striking a pallet of empty oil drums to the left of the group. The resulting clatter was a cacophony of noise, drawing the attention of the remaining 2 thugs and Falk's bodyguards. For a priceless 2 seconds, every single armed man was looking away from the container. That was his window. He dropped. He didn't use his grapple. He fell, a silent, controlled descent, his dark cloak spreading out like wings. He landed atop the shipping container with a whisper-soft thud that was lost in the chaos of the diversions. He was invisible, a phantom in their midst. He worked quickly. He pulled a small, circular EMP device from his belt and slapped it onto the container's electronic locking mechanism. He pressed a button on his gauntlet. There was a faint fizzle as the lock was fried, rendered inoperable. The doors were now permanently sealed until someone came at them with a blowtorch. Next, the truck. The thugs had brought a semi to haul the weapons away. He dropped from the container to the ground behind it, a pool of shadow in a deeper shadow. He planted a second, more powerful EMP on the truck's engine block and a small GPS tracker under the chassis. He could have disabled it completely, but Bruce's orders were often layered. Disabling the truck would be a mess. Making it seem like a simple breakdown later on was cleaner. His work was done. Now for the exit. He could have grappled away, disappearing back into the sky. But that wasn't the mission. The final part of his training was to understand fear. to wield it. He crept along the side of the truck, silent as a wraith. The thugs were still trying to figure out the source of the noises, their flashlights cutting uselessly through the darkness. Falk was getting impatient, yelling at Penguin's men. Deku targeted the most isolated one, a man standing guard near a stack of crates at the edge of the pier. He moved up behind him, a whisper of movement. The man shivered, a primal instinct telling him something was wrong. He started to turn. Too late. Deku's hand shot out, clamping over the man's mouth, stifling his cry. His other arm wrapped around the man's chest, lifting him off his feet and pulling him back into the impenetrable darkness between the crates. A precise nerve strike to the side of the neck, and the thug went limp, unconscious. It was clean, silent, and terrifyingly efficient. He deposited the body, then moved to his next target. This time, he used the environment. He scaled a stack of containers and, from above, dropped a single batarang that severed the rope holding a net full of cargo. The net dropped, enveloping two more thugs, pinning them to the ground in a tangled, struggling mess. Their panicked shouts alerted the others. The pier erupted into chaos. Falk and his bodyguards, realizing the deal had gone south, scrambled back towards their limo. Penguin's men started firing wildly into the shadows, their muzzle flashes illuminating their own terrified faces. "They're spooked," Bruce's voice said in his ear, calm as a frozen lake. "Time to leave." Deku didn't need to be told twice. He fired his grapple, not up, but down, towards the dark, churning water below the pier. As the hook caught on a piling, he dove off the side, swinging under the pier just as a hail of bullets stitched across the spot where he had been standing. He moved through the underbelly of the pier, a dark, damp world of barnacle-encrusted pylons and lapping waves. He emerged on the far side, soaked but invisible. He watched from the shadows as the limo sped away and Penguin's remaining men made a frantic, failed attempt to open the now sealed container. The mission was a complete, unqualified success. He had the intel. He had the buyer's identity. The shipment was neutralized. And he had done it all without taking a single hit, without being clearly seen. He had been a ghost. He had been a weapon. He returned to the cave, dripping seawater onto the stone floor. He pulled off his cowl, his chest heaving, not from exertion, but from the residual adrenaline. The suit's rebreather hissed as the seal was broken. He looked at Bruce, who had watched the entire mission unfold on the main screen. His mentor's face was, as usual, unreadable. He simply reviewed the data from Deku's camera, the audio files, the flawless execution of the plan. Izuku stood there, waiting for the verdict. For the analysis. For the critique of what he could have done better. Bruce turned from the computer. He walked over to Izuku, stopping in front of him. He looked at the boy, no, the young operative, standing before him, soaked and exhausted but radiating a new, steely competence. "Good work, Deku," Bruce said. The words were simple. They were quiet. But for Izuku, they were everything. It wasn't just praise for a successful mission. It was an acceptance of the name. An acknowledgement of the identity he had claimed. In the shadows of the Batcave, miles from the home that had rejected him, surrounded by the tools of a dark and lonely war, Izuku Midoriya finally felt like he had a purpose. He had taken the symbol of his greatest weakness and had made it his greatest strength. He was Deku. And he was just getting started.